It is all too common for the loved ones of victims to feel as though they're being ignored or brushed aside by the authorities involved in the case. It is just as standard for the conclusion to the case to seem downright illogical for the ones deeply bothered by the crime. Some questioning is unnecessary, particularly the line of questioning conspiracy theorists bring out of left field. Even if the answer provided is clear and concise, they will press until they are satisfied. When it comes to the mysterious death of Ellen Greenberg, there is nothing far-fetched about the doubt her parents have in the conclusion of her case. With 20 stab wounds to her body, 10 of which targeted the back of her neck, Philadelphia officials would claim this brutality as a suicide. With a skewed case and time destroying any evidence they may have found down the road, Ellen's parents are still fighting to this day to gain justice for their only child. This is the tragic story of Ellen Greenberg. It was June 23, 1983, when Ellen Greenberg was born to parents Joshua and Sandra Greenberg in New York. Her parents were two successful beings who had gotten their careers going before deciding to have a child. While they were usually staying in New Jersey, they had the luxury of traveling to the American Northeast. The arrival of baby Ellen set a new fire alight in her parents, who loved their daughter with every fiber of her being and continued to do so well into the future. Being the only child of a successful couple, Ellen Greenberg was a subject of unwavering support from her parents from a young age. The family would stay relatively put in one location to allow the young Greenberg to focus on her studies before the family moved to Pennsylvania from their New Jersey home when Greenberg was in middle school. Pennsylvania is where the family would grow new roots, staying in the state through the rest of the young Greenberg's general education years and further. Greenberg attended Penn State after graduating from high school, finding her personality blooming during her time there while studying for a degree in speech pathology. When she graduated with her degree, it was not long after Greenberg would find herself a job as well. Trying her best in the field, Greenberg found herself miserable in the line of work she had dedicated her studies to. The pressure wore on her, and it was with her parents' support when she finally made the steps to beginning night school. This time she worked on getting a degree in education. It took time, but only a few years later Greenberg graduated with a degree once more and took a job at a kindergarten to 8th grade school in Philadelphia. This new schooling career put her as a first-grade teacher, with some sources specifying English and others not. A bright, new, young face in the school seemed to bring everything closer together, and it wasn't long before Greenberg was considered a beloved member of the staff quickly. Greenberg also found an apartment not too far from the school she was employed at. It was a 6th-floor apartment somewhere in the Philadelphia area, and she didn't live alone. With her in the apartment was her fiancé, Samuel Sam Goldberg. Goldberg worked as a video producer somewhere in the area. The two were set to get wedded in the upcoming August before the tragedy struck. On the day in question, January 26, 2011, there was a blizzard looming over the northeast states of the USA. The threat of heavy snowfall wasn't unusual for the area, but this winter weather posed a more significant potential damage than any other standard snowfall usual for the area. It had already begun to snow when the students at Greenberg's place of employment were released early. It is claimed by other teachers that Greenberg did not leave the school until she was sure each of her students was safely on their way home. When she was sure the school was empty of her own class, she herself left the school to begin her journey home. On the way to her apartment, she stopped and filled her gas tank. There was no warning from anyone on that snowy Wednesday, as Greenberg's life was going relatively smoothly. The only sign anything was wrong came when Goldberg returned home to the apartment himself after a trip to the gym and found himself locked out of their apartment. Even when he used his keys, he found the inner and upper latch of the apartment door was fastened, barring him from entering into the flat. This didn't seem to concern Goldberg at first, so much as annoy him. The texts he begins to send to Greenberg paint the lock as more of an inconvenience, but with every frustrated text he sent, he was met with silence. He knocked loudly on the door, his text to his fiancée becoming increasingly frantic and irritated over nearly a half hour. When this time had passed and Goldberg had yet to receive any kind of response from inside the apartment, he attempted to contact the complex officials to ask for assistance. When assistance was denied, he instead chose to break the swing lock of the apartment and enter himself to figure out what was going on. Upon entering the apartment sometime after 6 in the evening on January 26, 2011, Sam Goldberg was greeted with a horrific scene. His fiancée, Ellen Greenberg, was slumped against the cabinets in the kitchen, and in her chest, a knife was embedded. At the age of 27, Ellen Greenberg was dead. The details of the scene Goldberg came upon are viewed with a grain of salt by some, as some details do not add up adequately. After discovering Greenberg's body, Goldberg contacted emergency services and spoke on the phone with a 911 operator for an undisclosed amount of time. According to some reports, the 911 operator provided several sets of instructions based on the spotty information they received, but the call has never been released to the public. The police arrived on the scene and inspected some while talking to Goldberg about his side of the story. The sight of Greenberg and the apartment contrasted heavily with Greenberg looking assaulted with stabs and bruises of various ages, while the apartment wasn't bothered in the slightest. Despite over 10 of the stab wounds being in the back of the neck, there were no signs of an intruder. Because of these pieces of evidence, including the sighting of new anxiety medication, the police were quick to conclude Greenberg's death was caused by suicide. During this time, the Greenberg parents were being contacted by the father of Sam Goldberg, and they learned something horrible had occurred. Josh and Sandy lived in Pennsylvania still, but lived in another city and were unable to go to the crime scene due to the incoming winter storm. Confident in their conclusion, the body of Ellen Greenberg would remain in the apartment for a while longer when officials left to get out of the blizzard. The complex manager and the security officer of the building were placed to watch over the room until medical examiners came to obtain the body. By this time, any evidence which may have been available would undoubtedly be contaminated. When the medical examination was performed the following morning, professionals were able to jot down many notes about the state of Ellen's corpse. Much of the notes concerned the different wounds she had, labeled from A to T for distinguishing purposes, which littered her chest and neck, with stray injuries also on her abdomen and scalp. The bruises were also noted before interesting notes came to be made. One of the first interesting details noted is Ellen had no defensive wounds, her arms and hands free of any harm. Medical professionals also went on to report the congealed blood Ellen had on her head. Despite Goldberg telling police officers he hadn't moved the corpse, Ellen had blood running horizontally towards her ears instead of vertically towards her chin. If she had been found with her head and upper back up against the lower parts of the cabinet, it appears as though Ellen's blood had defied gravity. While law enforcement officials had already come out to speak on their suicide theory, an act that is not common, as it is generally medical examiners who provide a cause of death, the case would be rocked when the medical exam came back with the conclusion of homicide. Sam Goldberg by this time had already been questioned and interviewed by police officers before being let go again, allowed to continue his life with no suspicion to his name. The homicide ruling reached the Greenberg parents, and this cause of death seemed more likely and much more easier for them to accept. The parents were known for keeping in contact with their daughter, pushing her to challenge her fears while providing assistance as she needed it. In the weeks before Ellen was found dead, she'd been attending therapy sessions at her parents' request and testing new medications prescribed to help with her anxiety. From texts with her mother, it seemed they were going well, though not without their hiccups. Police were not willing to change their theory on the cause of death, however, and it was about a month later when the medical examiner would come out once more. This time, unexpectedly, Dr. Marion Osborne, the professional who had performed the first autopsy, switched his decision. Instead of homicide, he agreed with the police force. Ellen Greenberg had committed suicide. The roller coaster of emotions the Greenberg family was going through from this trauma was only made worse by this whirlwind of changes. The suicide ruling would fall on deaf ears for Josh and Sandy Greenberg, and many others who are familiar with this case, and this would begin their long-running battle with officials to reclassify their daughter's death. In the years following Ellen's death, her case would be sent to several experts in the forensic field. One such doctor was Dr. Cyril R. Wecht, who was known for the work he had done over the years in true crime cases such as the O.J. Simpson trial and the assassination of JFK. Having been a member of his field for over half a century, he's consulted on many death disputes. When he evaluated the case, he shared his opinion. Dr. Wecht speaks in detail about the examination on a criminology podcast, speaking of various wounds she had sustained before concluding he believed the case was strongly suspicious of homicide. With renewed vigor, Josh and Sandy Greenberg approached Philadelphia officials with their daughter's case once more. An attorney who was on their case years before found himself in a higher position, and they were hopeful the tides were turning. To avoid appearing as though there was a conflict of interest between the attorney and the state, Ellen's case was reevaluated by other higher officials. It is reported the case was reconsidered in a very reserved investigation, passing in relative silence before it was shut with the same conclusion. The lack of genuine empathy felt like a slap in the face for the grieving parents. Almost as if adding insult to injury, news would come from the reconsideration, specifying a detail which had not been brought up before. While the initial report from 2011 had stated Ellen's personal laptop, which lacked password protection, presented no helpful information, the reconsideration brought forth Google searches of suicide methods, including searches for quick and painless suicides. These claims would be disputed by the Greenberg family and a team of their own experts. As it does, regardless of tragedy, the world continued on. The mysterious death of Ellen Greenberg is still classified as a suicide at the time of this video, and her parents still fight for her justice. Her former fiancé, Sam Goldberg, would go on to get married in 2014, and it is reported that he now has a child. The school Ellen worked for would honor the memory of the late 27-year-old with an area on the school grounds. We may never know the absolute truth of what happened on January 26, 2011, but the battle will never end for Josh and Sandy Greenberg. They maintain the Justice for Ellen Facebook page and do their best to stay hopeful that she'll be able to truly rest in peace one day. What do you think happened to Ellen Greenberg? Do you think she committed suicide, or do you believe she was murdered? Comment your thoughts below and let us know if you have any case recommendations you'd like us to cover. Don't forget to subscribe for more true crime content.